Good morning, everyone. I'm Mimi Lichtenstein, and welcome to Adventures in Luxury Travel. Today, we are going to talk all about safaris, our first in a series of Safari 101. And I have with me Lylie Mulman. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Mimi. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Well, I know we both love safaris, we both love wildlife, we both love adventure, so this is going to be a great conversation. We chose to start with South Africa, which is the biggest of the different safari countries that you can go to in Africa. And Lylie is an incredible resource for me when I'm planning trips there, and I'm excited to pull on all of your expertise today. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your world in safaris and how you got started?
Great. Thank you, Mimi. Well, basically, I'm South African, as you can hear. We're broadcasting actually live from South Africa here in Cape Town today. It's a beautiful day. I wish you could see how gorgeous it is outside. I've been obviously based in South Africa my whole life, spent a bit of time overseas as well in the States and in the UK. But when it comes to getting back to your home turf, I tell you, South Africa is the most incredible place. And being on safari and being on many safaris on my own with my family, I can honestly say it's one of the best holidays that one needs to go on. It's not even a want; it's an absolute must. And I just come from 20 years in luxury travel, so I can really, talk about safaris, talk about South Africa. Being based here, I get to see what's on the ground on a daily basis. So it's really fantastic to be able to be in such a wonderful, wonderful country. So hopefully we can talk you through a bit of what is so inspiring about South Africa.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, I live in the United States. New Hampshire is very far from all these African lodges. So to have someone like you on the ground and your team of people who are constantly going to these lodges to do site visits and see how they're handling situations on the ground and their service levels and the animals and wildlife, it's such a value add to me when I'm planning trips. So I so appreciate you and you coming on. All right, well, let's dive in. We're going to talk first, like I always like to do, is just look at an overview of a map. So for everyone, who knows, Africa is an extremely large continent and South Africa is at the very bottom of it. Do you want to give us a little bit of an overview? So if you have Cape Town down here in the kind of bottom left, where are the big safari areas in South Africa?
So the general itinerary that most people will do when they come to South Africa for the first time is they'll incorporate usually Cape Town down at the right down at the base, as you said. Then they'll incorporate a few days in the winelands, which is about within 2 hours drive of Cape Town, and then of course they'll shoot up north just past Johannesburg, if you go up past the map into the Hoedspruit, Nelspruit area. Now that is where all the main safaris happen within South Africa. We've got we'll talk about something on the next map, but that gives you a very good overview of what a general itinerary would be. Just to tell you as well, when you break it down into timings and how long an itinerary needs to be to cover those areas, we say usually about 3 to 4 days in Cape Town, 2 or 3 days in the winelands, and then up to safari for at least 4 days. I wouldn't do less than 4 days on safari.
Well, I have my safari planned to Kenya for next summer, and I think we're at least 9 or 10 days on safari. So just in Kenya. So of course there's so many, right? And they're all so different. So we'll talk about Kenya another day. So this map is probably very hard for most people to read because the fonts are really small. You can give us an overview of it. And I think the other thing I want to point out is there are over 700 safari lodges in South Africa alone. That doesn't even count all the other countries. And so this is a map that has many of the lodges on here, and you can see it's very overwhelming for somebody who wants to go on a safari. How do they even know where to go? So we'll talk about that in a minute. Maybe you could give us a little bit of an overview about the different concessions and parks in this area.
Sure. Okay, so you won't be able to see it too well, as you said, Mimi, but on the right-hand side is basically the KRUGER National Park. Now that is it's a park that's not only open to lodges that are based in the park, but they're also open to the public. So the general public can access the Kruger National Park. It has tarred roads, it has some gravelled roads. It's a great experience for a lot of the locals. We love going there, but also if you're wanting your more fancier lodges, you can find them in the Kruger National Park. The Kruger National Park also is 19,000 square meters, 19,485 to be specific square meters. So you can imagine how big it is. Lots of different national parks national parks accommodation within the Kruger. But generally speaking, there are some beautiful, beautiful lodges as well. Now, if we go to some of the smaller areas, we've got the Sabi Sands, which I know we're going to focus on quite a lot today. So the Sabi Sands is where you'll find some of the more well-known lodges, like Singita, like Dulini Collection. You'll also find places like Leopard Hills, Ulasaba. These are all based in the Sabi Sands. The Sabi Sands is 650 square kilometers. So it really does give you an idea of the difference of size. But the great thing is that the game is open between the fences. So there's actually no fences. So really, the game does go through. So it really is an incredible space and place to be able to see what's known as the Big Five. I'm sure you know what the Big Five comprises of. But really, it's a wonderful, wonderful place to go and see the Big Five. Also, Sabi Sands is well known for its leopards. So if clients are wanting, or if someone's wanting to see the leopards, Sabi Sands is a dead cert to go to that area, I would definitely say. You've also got Mala Mala, which is just next to Sabi Sands. One thing just to mention, going back to Sabi Sands, is with the lodges, a lot of the lodges have sort of communication with each other in regards to what their transversing rights are. So you can actually transverse to their land, they can transverse to your land, and basically it means that there's very good understanding between the lodges when within those areas. There's never more than 2 to 3 vehicles on a kill or on a sighting. Usually you're the only vehicle, and they're very, very respectful of whoever sees the sighting first gets to stay with the sighting for a good amount of time, and then obviously when it's time to move off, they then call in and explain what they've seen, and then another vehicle will come in. So it's not like too commercial in the sense that there's lots of vehicles trying to get a good view of a sighting.
Mm-hmm. And I know you and I touched on when we were talking about getting ready for today about the difference between going into Kruger National Park and some of these private concessions, and what kind of experience differential there is. And what you said is an example of, if you're in Kruger National Park, that what you just mentioned doesn't happen, right? There could be lots and lots of people wherever there are animal sightings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's important to realize as well is with the lodges, with the private lodges, that you actually there's no timings, in the sense that you run your own schedule. There's usually a game drive in the morning and the evening. I'll go into more detail on that, but there's no it's your holiday, it's your trip. You go by your schedule, and they obviously will guide you the best time of day to go out. So that's really a good it gives you a very good understanding of how it works within these sort of smaller private areas. Obviously, you've also got Mala Mala and Manyeleti and some areas up north. But this gives you also an idea, now honing in on the Sabi Sands, how many lodges are in the Sabi Sands itself. So I did touch on them a little bit earlier, but you've got the likes of Ulisaba, you've got Leopard Hills, you've got Singita, you've got Notton's Camp, Londolozi. So there's a lots of different camps, which is great. And each lodge has its own look and feel. So a lot of the time you will go, we'll talk about that again in a few minutes. It depends on what you're looking for within the lodge as to which one you're going to choose. So that's imperative. What we find as well is with our clients and with our guests, when they go back, they usually have such a good experience with their trackers and their game rangers, their guides, that they actually specifically ask for those guides and trackers when they go back. So it becomes one of those places that you can return to again and again and again. You can never get enough of Africa. That's for sure.
I love anybody who goes to Africa on safari, never regrets going to Africa on safari. Absolutely. For sure. and they come home and they feel like the fabric of their person has changed, like they've seen things and experienced things that really kind of altered who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can feel the heartbeat of Africa when you put your feet on the soil. It is just, it's an absolutely incredible destination, and you will be changed forever, especially after safari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I know when we were preparing again, I wanted to come up with a list of questions that people could think about. So I came up with 7 of them, and we'll talk through those now. But you
Yeah.
think to yourself, okay, I want to go on safari. What next?
Yeah.
You have the issue of trying to figure out which country you want to go to. So that's one issue. But then even once you hone in on one country or maybe 2 countries, then you have a whole other list of questions to ask yourself. And one of them is, a big one is, who's going? Are you going on a honeymoon? Are you going, are you retired? Are you going with some friends? Are you going with your family? Are you going with your extended family, grandparents, grandkids, parents? So that's a big one, because it really will help dictate the lodge that you go to because of logistics, as well as, the type of place that you want to stay, and what kind of drives that you're going on. Are you going on walking ones or just driving ones, boats and all that?
Absolutely.
And I think for kids, a key part is the flexible times for the game drives, because some of the lodges have set times. Maybe you could talk to that a little bit, that they might have, an early morning one that might be hard to either get teenagers out of bed for, or a little kids.
Exactly. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Mimi. I think when it comes to safari, you have to be pretty specific in regards to what you're actually looking for. So if it's a honeymoon, of course you're going to go to a lodge that's probably smaller, that's more intimate, that doesn't have lots of kids running around, and so you're going to have a more bespoke, a more smaller lodge, maybe a four suite lodge, or a lodge that's only got maybe 4 to 6 rooms, whatever that might be. You also might look at one of the most incredible experiences, which is sleeping underneath the stars, which we'll talk about later, and that specific lodges have. So that we will know when it's a honeymoon. We know exactly what type of lodges to guide them towards. When it's a family, not all lodges will take kids, and not all lodges will take kids under 6. So the general age for children, generally speaking, now is at least 6 and upwards. And the reason being is you are in a wild area. Obviously, if it's not fenced, if the lodge is not fenced, they sometimes say under 10. So no under 10s. So it really does depend on how comfortable the children are, how comfortable the lodge is to accept the lodge. Obviously, if it's a multi-gen family and they're taking out the whole lodge or the whole villa, that's a whole different story. You get your own vehicles and you go by your own times. Like you said, the teenagers might want to sleep in, and the little ones are up at 5 ready to go. So you really can hone it in when it's an exclusive use property. And we do have a lot of those lodges in these areas that can obviously accommodate that type of traveler. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think some of them, they have, a building and accommodation within the bigger lodge area that could accommodate, a buyout or a whole family. And then other ones, it's just you all by yourself. One of the ones we're staying at is Angama up in Kenya, and it's all a tented camp all by itself. So nobody else is around you. So yeah, there are differences depending upon how private and exclusive you want it to be.
Yeah, and I think something to also just take into account, which is quite a biggie, is obviously these areas are malaria areas in the Sabi Sands. So when it comes to children, we do have lots of offerings that are not malaria areas, and we'll talk about that later too. But that's something just to keep into account. One thing I have realized going on safari, I actually took my 2 boys on safari recently. They're 8 years old. Was to see a safari experience through their eyes. It was absolutely the most incredible thing to see, for them to see their first wild animals and getting up close with lions. And they were, and that's where the game rangers are very good. They look at the families, they gauge the families very quickly, and they can see, okay, this family is going to be fantastic. It's going to be easy. These kids are not going to get too nervous if the lions come close or the ellies come close. And if they do have a family where kids are a bit nervous, they'll just go on like a little bumble ride or something where they'll walk, they'll go down and see the insects and the trees and maybe some giraffes and those sort of things. So they really, they know and they gauge their clients very, very well when it comes to the lodges.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something just to bear in mind. Of course, it also does depend what wildlife they want to see.
Yes,
So if they're coming, coming specifically for the big five, then obviously that area is fantastic for the big five. But it's like anything, if you're going scuba diving in the ocean, you're not guaranteed to see a manta ray or a whale shark. Same applies for when you're going into the wild. You might go for days without seeing anything, that's sort of a member of the big five, etc. And then the next day you might see all five in one day. So it really does depend. But if you are there for 4 days, you will see some very exciting game.
Mm-hmm. And so we have just a few pictures here: giraffes, wild dogs, and lions. But obviously there are so many different animals in Africa, which is why we all love it. One of that kind of relates to the next question is, what type of game drives do you want to do? So there are driving ones that are typically in like land cruisers. There are walking safaris. There are boat safaris that you can go out on the river. So depending upon if you have an interest to do a variety of those, then that might steer you towards one camp or another camp as well.
Yeah, correct. I think, when it comes to the game drives, those are usually done at any lodge. They're done twice a day. Normally it's a 6-seater vehicle that you go onto, and you experience these game drives. The trackers are on the front. You get really incredible up close and personal experiences with these animals, which is amazing. When it comes to walking safaris, that brings a whole nother element in. You're getting used to the smells. You're getting to see the small insects and the fauna and the flora, and you're getting to see the trees. So it really is a whole different experience in itself, and very exhilarating, actually, being on a walking safari. Normally the walking safaris only take children over 16, because obviously the nature of where you are, but really exhilarating and well worth it. Just to mention, on the walking safaris, we've got lodges like Royal Malawan, which has 3 of the world-class trackers. They have 3 of the best trackers in the world based at Royal Malawan. So if you're going to do walking safaris, and if that is something that that is really a must-do on your itinerary, we will make sure that the right lodge, we match it to where you want to be. The other thing is, some of the lodges or some of the properties have various lodges, and you can actually walk between the lodges. So Dulini Collection, as an example, you can walk from Dulini River Lodge to Dulini Leadwood Lodge, or it might be Moya, but you walk between the two and it becomes a whole experience. So if you're doing a combination of 2 properties, it actually works really well, because one is maybe based on the river, one is maybe based around the leadwood trees on a dry riverbed, and then you walk between the two and you get that really amazing experience, not having to worry about your luggage, etc.
Yeah, and it's just a very good perspective to to see how they relate to one another, and the path that the animals are taking, perhaps to get to the riverbed, to get water, and then go back to the plains.
Absolutely.
I think I love these pictures. So this is a picture of, how do you pronounce it? Is a Makono? How do you pronounce
Makoro. It's a
Makoro.
Makoro. This is obviously more Botswana based. So this is just to give you an idea. When you picture a safari in your head, there's so many different safaris you can do. You can do the ones in South Africa, which I mentioned. You can do ones in sort of Zimbabwe and Zambia, and then you can also do Botswana. So we really sort of help you to guide you as to what are you wanting when you think of a safari. Are you wanting to go on a Makoro? Because if you are, then that's Botswana. But if you're not, then South Africa is perfect. So it really depends, and that's why I put this picture in here of this Makoro, is to just help you understand, or help everyone to understand that you're not going to get the same game viewing experience everywhere you go.
No. And I think that that's the beauty of combining 2 or 3 lodges, not just going for 3 or 4 days to one lodge, is that you can have those complementary experiences, activities, lodge experiences as well. Some have pools, some don't, some are mobile tented camps.
Correct.
I think it's going to be one of my other questions on here. What about, okay, I'm going to keep us going because I know that you and I could talk about safaris for 6 hours today. We're going to stay under an hour for sure. So
Okay.
how active do I want to be? If you are in a mobile tented camp, there's no pool, there's no, fitness room. So talk a little bit about, what do people need to think of if you're going with active teenagers, which mine are and my family is. So that's always the lens that I look at things through. What kind of things do you want to think about as far as the type of camp that you go to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're spot on in regards to the mobile tents. I think, a lot of the safari lodges will have, a communal pool. Some of them, a lot of them will have their own private pool. There is fitness centers, but it really is. It's choosing the lodge that'll suit obviously the family ideally. So with teenagers, perhaps get them engaged with photography. Doing something that they never maybe have done before. So getting them engaged with a photographic guide who will take them out, and they don't necessarily have to have their own cameras. They can, some of the lodges provide the cameras. You can hire them, and then coming back to the photographic studios and being able to actually print them out on canvas. Something like that is, teenagers, to get them away from their devices and get them into an incredible surrounding and do something different that they would never have done, is really where we'll drive them.
Right.
So also, I mean, there's a lot of wellness aspects to the lodges too. There's spas, there's lap pools, etc. So that's another thing. Do you want to go and maybe go on a game drive in the morning and then relax in the afternoon and do a spa? So most lodges will do 2 drives a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. And obviously, the reason for that is because that's the best time to see the animals. They come out at those sort of times. So in and around the other times within the day, to be honest, each game drive is usually about 2 to 3 hours. So by the time you come back and you've had breakfast and you've relaxed for a bit, before you know it, it's lunchtime. And then before you know it, you have a quick spa and then you're off again. And it's amazing. So, but the days go very quickly.
So how do we fit in the sundowners? Because I know that's an essential part of a safari for many people.
Yeah, absolutely. The sundowners are the ultimate in Africa. So basically, how that would be fitted in is in a game drive. So the game drives will leave usually around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, depending on summer or winter. And then they'll go and we'll do a bit of a game drive in still in the light. And then usually what happens is the game ranger will find a wonderful spot that there's no one else at. It might be at a waterhole, it might be overlooking a valley, and then they will set up a beautiful sundowner experience for the clients. So jump out the vehicle. There's usually obviously lots of South African goodies like biltong and nuts and amarula, and it really is the most amazing experience. Also in the mornings, just to mention, we do have amarula coffee with marshmallows, which is a really fun way to start the day as well on your morning stop. So you'll have an evening stop for sundowners, and then you'll have a morning stop as well when you have your coffees. Okay. So there's always something happening.
Yeah. So 2 different beverages.
Yeah.
Okay. So other property activities. If people have little kids, a lot of the rangers and the staff that work at these lodges are there to engage them and teach them about the animals and the conservation and sustainability. And, there's so much learning that's happening there that's experiential. They don't even, of course, know they're learning. They're just enjoying every minute.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of the programs they have for the kids are fantastic, that they get little backpacks and they get a little guidebook where they tick off everything they've seen. They get involved in the birds too. It's not just about the big animals, it's the birds, and there's lots of bird life in those areas. So they really get them involved and encourage them. And by the time these kids leave, I tell you, they are little gurus, they're little rangers themselves. They just absolutely love it. And obviously from a sustainability point of view, most of the lodges will have a sustainability project or a sustainability element to the lodge, whether it's solar, whether it's conservation projects, etc. There's always something going on from a sustainability and conservation side of things, which the kids can go and experience too, which is great. It might be a school down the road that the lodge is looking after, or it might be an experience where you're going into a local's home to experience some of the food, or it might be a sustainability vegetable garden or something like that. So there's always something that they can engage in on the property level.
Yeah. So there's definitely not, there is downtime if you want to kick back and read a book, but if you don't, then there's also plenty to do.
Yes. Absolutely.
Then let's talk a little bit about, next one is, what kind of style or feel do you want to the lodge? Because I think a lot of people have a vision of what the places in Africa will look like when they go, whether it be from a movie or a friend's photos or whatever. And so if you're going thinking that you're going to be in, kind of a tented type of camp that's quite, luxurious but rustic looking, very sort of campy looking, and you show up to the to the lodge on the left of this photo, you might be
Yeah,
a little confused as to where you are in the world. But there's quite a mix
absolutely.
of styles. You want to tell us a little bit about
Yeah, and to be honest, Mimi, that's where we have to get it right because, like you say, the expectations of the clients and what everyone has their own vision of what a safari is. So we have to get it right in that regards. And those are questions that we make sure that we ask when clients are keen to travel. Do you want the canvas? The canvas is fantastic. You almost feel at one with nature. The sounds are so much more amplified. If the lions are roaring, it sounds like they're roaring in your bed. But literally they could be a few kilometers away. So it is, it almost feels like a little bit more of an intense sort of experience, but in a beautiful way. And then of course you've got your contemporary feel, which is, lots of glass and lots of, clean edges and that sort of thing. So we can offer both spectrums, absolutely, when it comes to what the offering is. Obviously we got thatched as well, lots of thatch in Africa. So, it just really depends. Another thing is, the private pools. It's hot in Africa. It is really hot in Africa, and during the really peak seasons when it's really hot, you want to be able to dip into a pool. You're literally gagging for that pool. So we would always make sure that they know whether there's a pool or not. And most of the suites, especially on the upper end 5-star level, will have their own private pools, which is great. So you come back from your game drive, go back to your room, have a dip in your pool, and before you know it, you're back for lunch.
Yeah, sounds like I could stay on it forever. And the next point, number 7, is, what level of luxury would you like? So there are mobile tented camps that I say would be, bucket showers and those sorts of things. But to your point, it's very much one with nature, all the way up to, the contemporary place you see on the left, 14 different types of gin. Anytime you show up at the bar, the bartender's going to come and make you whatever cocktail you want, air conditioning, all of that good stuff. So that's really important to get. Obviously, the price point changes based on the level of luxury that you're looking for. But for some people, you might not need that super duper high end. And for other people, you definitely do. So it's really something just to think about for yourself, what you're looking for, because there's no use staying at a lodge that has all this stuff that you're not going to need if maybe, the priorities for your family are a little bit different. So
and I tell you what, Mimi, as well, it's all in the detail. I mean, things like a game drive, for instance, you've got the likes of, let's say, as an example, Dulini collection. When you go on your game drive, your center console has pretty much everything you could require. You've got tissues, you've got sanitizer, you've got binoculars, you name it. I mean, everything is there. Whereas some of the other lodges, you get into your vehicle and off you go, and you're bumbling along at the back and off you go. Whereas, some of them are more luxurious in the sense of the covers, and you get hot water bottles and blankets in the morning in the winter, and it really is, those sort of details make all the difference when it comes to your game drive experience, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And again, so it's just setting those expectations and finding out what someone's looking for. I love these pictures. So here's some more pictures of a lion cub and some elephants and a sleeping leopard in the tree. I just love the visual of the leopard sleeping up in the trees. And we touched on the difference between KRUGER and the private concessions before, so maybe we won't go into it now. But let's talk a little bit about some of your favorite lodges. You mentioned Dulini a couple of times. Let's talk about that one.
Okay, so Dulini is really, it's a fantastic lodge in the sense that it's small and it's intimate. So there's 3 lodges in themselves. So there's River Lodge, so Dulini River, Dulini Moya, and Julini Leadwood Lodge. So all three of those lodges are within close proximity of each other. You can do the walking between them, like I mentioned, but they all offer something completely different. So it really is that type of experience that you can actually combine 3 nights there and 3 nights at another, because you are going to be getting a different BOEM experience, a different room, different suite, and it really is intimate. So, you've got either 4 suites or 6 suites in all of them. So Moya and River Lodge are both 6, and then Julini Leadwood is 4. So for someone who's wanting to have an all-exclusive, exclusive use multi-gen holiday, oh my goodness, this is spot on. Their ranges are unbelievable. I was lucky enough to be there recently in July, and the game viewing, I have never seen anything like it in my entire life of being on safari. We saw leopard in the tree with a kill, and 2 leopard cubs in the tree with the leopard. I mean, that is just, you just don't see those sort of things.
Yeah.
So it really is an exceptional place, and brilliant service and owner run as well, which is great.
2 things. Are they owned by the same people that own the Royal Portfolio hotels?
No.
They're not. Okay.
Not Julini, no.
Okay.
So that's obviously that would be Royal Portfolio Liz Biden.
Yeah.
So no, Julini is owned by the Garretts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next comment I wanted to make was about, so you said this is a small, intimate lodge for accommodations, 6 accommodations, something that I think people don't think about a lot. But when you are staying at some of the bigger lodges, a lot of those lodges are where more group trips travel, and they buy out, let's say, if it's 20 rooms, they buy out 10 or 12 of them. So the dynamic that you have staying at a lodge that might have half of the people within a group traveling together is very different than if you're staying at a lodge where, it's all individual families or couples or that sort of thing. So that's something to think about, and another big advantage of having a smaller lodge.
Absolutely.
Lion Sand. So I love this, a couple of these photos. So not only, can you sit outside and have dinner overlooking, where wildlife is going to walk up and greet you while you're eating your dinner, but also sit outside around a fire pit in this super comfy couch. It just looks like absolute perfection for a cool summer evening. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Lion Sands obviously group have quite a few lodges, which is fantastic. But they do have a very, very good family values, in the sense that the kids, the owners, the Moores, Rob Moore, he's got twin children called Mac and Maddie, and they've actually put a whole program together based on Mac and Maddie. So it really is a fantastic experience for children, and also, as I say, they value there's certain values on the families, etc. It really does. You can see that in their lodges. And then you've got Ivory Lodge, which is a bit more contemporary. It's got a lot of glass, etc. So Lion Sands is a very good offering as well. Also quite small and intimate, not as small as Julini, about 8 suites in some of them. But yeah, really, really incredible experience too.
And I think that's the other key about the small lodges is, obviously, if you have 4 suites, then 4 suites go very quickly. So in terms of planning ahead to stay at some of these smaller, more intimate lodges, it definitely behooves everybody to think ahead, over a year ahead, often over a year ahead. And now with everything that's going on, a couple of years ahead is not unheard of.
Yeah. And just to mention as well, when it comes to honeymooners, I mean, that's something you can usually book in advance, which is brilliant, because obviously they know the wedding date, they know how long they have to plan in advance. But things like honeymooners, when they stay in these type of smaller bespoke lodges, and even some of the bigger ones, they don't need to mix at all with any of the other guests. I mean, some of them will have their own private vehicle. They can do in-room dining every night if they would like, depending on the lodges, or they would take them out to a surprise dinner out underneath the stars, or a starbed experience. So there really is a lot to offer for honeymooners, which is just, something, and the star beds are those sort of things we need to book in advance. So, it's very good to know in advance on that aspect.
I would like to offer that star beds are not just for couples, because we are sleeping in star beds when we go to Kenya, because just was on my list of things I wanted to do. So my children will be sleeping in star beds too, probably a different star bed.
Brilliant.
Singita. Singita is very well known for being extremely luxurious, extremely high quality. It's one of those things. They have quite a few lodges. I don't know how many of them are in South Africa, but they have at least 9, right? In
Yeah,
total.
they've got a lot of lodges, Sangeeta, and I mean the ones within the Sabi Sands area is Ebony and Boulders.
Okay.
So, and both of them, although they're right next to each other, or very close to each other, they offer something completely different. I mean,
Mhm.
so Ebony is more your, it has got a slightly contemporary, but then mixed with the old world style, whereas Boulders is quite funky and lots of glass and built within the boulders, and they really do offer something quite different in regards to their offering. What I loved about Boulders as well is they've got the most incredible underground wine cellar, which is built into the boulders. And it really is, I mean, you feel, I've never been into a wine cellar like that before. Absolutely incredible.
Nice.
And all the staff are brilliant at Singita. In fact, all the lodges, the staff are just, you get a different feel. Singita's the staff is, they're very, very, very good at what they do. The ranges are absolutely fantastic. And then you look at the likes of somewhere like Delini, where it's almost like you feel like you're part of Delini when you leave. You feel like you're part of the whole family, so to speak. So it really, each lodge brings its different flair, its different feel, and it's different sort of, all the service levels are brilliant, but it's a different kind of offering.
Right. So our next photo is of Lion Sands Game Reserve, which looks like it is. Is this a starbed?
Yes, that is absolutely a starbed. So that is at Lion Sands, and it really that's in the Greater KRUGER part. And this is an example of what a sleeping under the stars is, and a starbed. So some of them are raised, well, they're all raised, but some of them, are built into cliffs. It just depends on which lodge you're going to.
Right.
So I've stayed at Chalky, which is in Lion Sands as well, and really, really incredible experience. And it, you go on your game drive, you get dropped off there. You can have dinner there. Sometimes they have dinner at the lodge first, and then they drop you there. But it really is an incredible experience to be at one-on-one with nature and just hear these sounds that you would never hear. Being so up close and personal with the game, it really is an incredible experience. But some people are a little bit nervous, and you know what? They leave you with the radio, and if you want to come back, you come back, and that's fine. So we unfortunately had to go back because the heavens opened and there was actually no roof at ours at that stage. So we unfortunately had to go back early, but it was an incredible experience, and I really recommend it.
To your point, the reason I asked you, is this a starbed, is they all look so different. All the ones that I've seen before look different than this. There's some that look like they're actually in a tree. There's others that are, 3 stories high and extremely vertical and open to the sky, which is what I was thinking of. And this one obviously has a cover. So you'd be a little bit sheltered if there was weather, but obviously there's no walls. So you hear everything, you experience everything, you feel everything. And I think everybody should put it on their list, whether they're going as couples or as families.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Really worth it.
I'm going to keep us moving. Otherwise, we're never going to finish our conversation. Safari experiences. So obviously people are going there typically to see animals, but there's also so much more to do. We touched a little bit on how fun it is for the kids with the rangers at the lodges and out and about. But there's also hot air ballooning and, some other ways that you can experience it. You want to touch on some of those?
Yeah, just to highlight here, like I did with the Makoros as well, the hot air balloons you don't do in the Sabi Sands or the KRUGER. These are more for when you're in Botswana or Kenya or, East Africa. You can do those sort of experiences, but not, it's definitely more an East Africa thing because of the migration. But just, I wanted to show you again, when you think of safari, people do sometimes see a hot air balloon and the animals below them, and you've just got to make sure they understand that they're not going to experience that in the Sabi Sands. But we did touch on most of this safari experiences that one can do that's out of the actual lodge. So yeah, I think we've covered those, which is great.
Okay, good. And you mentioned the
Photographic
photography,
safaris.
right? Which is great for anybody, and especially to engage teenagers.
Just to mention, Mimi, sorry, just to go back to that slide for 1 second. As you can see, he's sitting on a swivel seat.
Okay.
So there are specific vehicles that are absolutely perfect for photographic safaris. So they're not your standard safari vehicle. They've got swivel seats. They've got stands for them to put their cameras on. As you can see, it looks quite different from a normal vehicle. So, if someone is into their photography and specifically wanting to go on a photographic safari, we will make sure that they're on at the right lodge.
Okay, good to know. Getting around. Obviously, you can't drive to all of these places, so it involves getting into something that flies, typically a plane, a bush plane, sometimes a helicopter. In terms of the logistics, when we're planning a safari and you're going, let's say, 3 different places, there's a lot of conversation about what the order should be and logistically how to get from here to there. A lot of them have their own airstrips. A lot of them have their own planes. But do you want to touch on briefly kind of what a bush plane? There's smaller bush planes and there's larger bush planes. Tell us a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's various ways to get into these safari areas. So there's 2 main airports. There's actually more than 2, but the ones that we would use are Nelspruit and Hoedspruit. So those are the 2 main sort of I would say entry points into these areas. However, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, Mimi, there are also lots of their own airstrips that lodges have. So you can get into, a 4-seater plane. There can be a slightly larger plane. So what's great about it is that you land specifically right on the concession that you're on. So you're landing, you get off onto your vehicle and off you go straight to the lodge. Whereas if you're landing at Nelspruit or Hoedspruit, you might have a transfer of 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, depending on where you're going. So this is a lovely way to enter and to really feel like you're on safari straight away. What's quite fun as well is that the pilot needs to actually go down, usually twice. So goes down, checks if there's any animals on the runway. If there is, hopefully the loud noise shoos them all off, and then he comes and circles around and lands again. So it's really it's quite a fun experience to land onto the landing strips that are directly at the lodges.
Absolutely. And, if you haven't been in any of these little planes, this is part of the experience. It's not even like you have to drive 2 hours to get somewhere. Like, you enjoy the actual transportation to get where you're going.
Absolutely.
And then, so we talked about the big area near KRUGER National Park, but there are some other areas, even driving distance from Cape Town and to the west of South Africa, that you can go on safari. We don't really have time to go into all of those, but just know there are other ones out there. More beautiful pictures of lions and giraffes and elephants here. And this is just one of the huge plains and the sunsets. I mean, the sunsets in Africa, everybody says, aren't really replicable anywhere else. What do you think?
Absolutely. And that's why the sundowners are just so special when you're on safari, because there's nothing quite like it. Seeing the animals, listening to the sounds, having your glass of wine or G&T and seeing that sun go down is spectacular. Just to mention very quickly, Mimi, those other areas we spoke about, most of them are malaria free, which is great. So if you have a family that's not wanting to take malaria tablets and they want to go to have a safari experience but don't want to have to go through taking any medication, there's plenty of offerings, even in the Eastern Cape in South Africa as well, in those Shamwari areas. So there's lots to do, and the experience is fantastic. It's also just it's fantastic. So
there's a lot of options. Yeah. If there's over 700 lodges in South Africa alone, who knows how many there are in total in Africa? There's definitely the right place for everybody. Okay, so we're going to spend a few minutes on Cape Town and a few of the other regions, because typically if you're going to go to South Africa, you have to go to Cape Town, one of the most special cities in the whole world. I love this photo because it's so vibrant and colorful. And of course, it has Table Mountain in the background. You want to tell us a little bit about this neighborhood?
Fantastic. Yeah. So this is the Boerkaap area, which is it's basically a very historical and cultural area within Cape Town. It's all these beautiful, brightly colored houses. You really can go on a lovely historical tour around this area, and then also end off with a Cape Malay cooking course, where you can actually go into one of the houses and be with one of the Cape Malay cooks who will help you design all these amazing curries that the Cape Malay people are known for. So it really is a a wonderful experience, probably the most photographed neighborhood in Cape Town. So if not South Africa, neighborhood-wise, it really is special. So this, and obviously you've got Cape Town, Table Mountain in the background. So that's a little intro to Burkop.
Mm-hmm. And so Cape Town in itself is beautiful. It's an urban, obviously it's a city, but there's also so much outdoors to do, and it's so easy to be active. Most of my clients want to be active doing cool, fun things on vacation. So I'm always thinking about that. If people were interested in, let's say they stay in Cape Town, what do you suggest about, going down to the peninsula? Tell us a little bit about some of the fun things people can do outdoors and adventurous.
Okay, great. Well, firstly, if you stay in Cape Town, I mean, you absolutely need to go up Table Mountain. That is a dead cert. And there's two ways of doing that. Either you can walk up Table Mountain or you can go up the cable car. So you can always do one way up and then you can go up in the cable car, come down. So there's also options there where you can have a guide that will obviously take you down Table Mountain. There's various different experience levels as well with that. Also, there's absolutely worth going to see the penguins. As you can see, the penguins here are based in they're in Boulders Beach. So it is absolutely something that's a must when you go to Cape Town to see the penguins. Also, you can go and forage on the rocks, and you can actually go and pick up some mussels and seaweed and all these other beautiful sort of natural environments, food options that you then put into you can go to a cooking course straight after that, and then you cook up everything that you've actually foraged for. So incredible experience as well. Also, one thing which we love doing is we do a trip to Cape Point, and you go and see the lighthouse, and you go down to there's a little beach there, and we set up a picnic for you, and it really is a wonderful way to see the Cape Point as well, just to sit there and take in the environment. We actually bring sups out, so stand-up paddleboards, so you can actually go supping around the area as well. So it really is a lovely and active thing to do. And there's so many options in Cape Town, which is fantastic.
And biking. One thing I did want to ask you about, what's going on with shark diving? Because I had heard that a lot of the killer whales had come in and somehow decimated the great white shark population.
Yeah, so it comes and goes. There has been definitely killer whales that have been in, and definitely there has been mention of that the great whites have moved out because of that. I know in a fantastic surfing spot here called Musenberg, we actually have shark spotters for the surfers and the swimmers, and I must say, I mean, they're hardly ever spotted now, which is and they say it is because the killer whales have come in. But great white shark diving is still done. It's still done at Gansbaai, which is slightly out of Cape Town. It's probably about a 2-hour drive from Cape Town, 1.5, 2 hours. That is still done. You can experience that and go diving with the great whites. That is something that people still love to do from an adventure point of view.
And you mentioned surfing, which we didn't touch on. So you can also do some surfing.
Absolutely. Great surfing.
Living in Cape Town is like an active adventurer's dream for sure. Some of the favorite hotels, you have pictures here of Mount Nelson, which is a Belmont hotel. I love Belmont hotels. They always have a very strong sense of place.
Yes.
Grace and Silo, which I also love. And while you touch on those, I'm going to show a couple other pictures of Silo because I love it so much.
Okay, great. So, I think, there's so many beautiful, popular hotels that we work with in Cape Town. As you mentioned, the Silo Cape Grace, Belmont Mount Nelson, you've got the 12 Apostles, you've got Element House. All of them have their own different feel and vibe, I guess. Now, obviously, Silo you're showing pictures of now is obviously part of the Royal Portfolio. It is made, the hotel was actually developed from an old grain silo. So it really has got so much history to it. It's based right at the waterfront. So your location is fantastic, overlooking Table Mountain. That's the rooftop there. And it really is a beautiful location. I was actually at the silo this morning. so
I'm so
lucky enough to be there this morning. And I was also at the Cape Grace this morning. So it really is a beautiful hotel and part of the portfolio, as I said, the Royal Portfolio, really, really wonderful collection of hotels.
Yeah. And there is a one and only in Cape Town too. I was just at the one and only in Montenegro last week. I fell in love. It just opened in May. It's absolutely spectacular. I've not been to the one and only in Cape Town, but put that on the list too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one and only in Cape Town, again, it's at the waterfront. It's a fantastic location. And if you know the one and only brand, like most people will know the brand, it really does outdo itself in regards to, what its offering is and its location. So really good. Just to mention about the Cape Grace as well, it's such an iconic hotel. It's been around for years in South Africa, and it really is, it's more sort of an old world feel to it. Absolutely stunning location as well. So again, we just drive people as to where
Right.
what appeals to them.
The answer is always, it depends. What's the best hotel in Cape Town? It depends.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is one of my favorites, though,
Yeah.
Tinswalu.
So
So
this is,
Tinswalu Atlantic.
how far is this driving? Like if you were to, obviously it depends on traffic, I know in Cape Town, but approximately how far is this from like the VNA waterfront?
So from the VNA, probably half an hour, maybe a bit more. It depends, as you say, on traffic. We joke because everything in Cape Town is 20 minutes. If everything takes 20 minutes to get wherever, but obviously it can take a bit longer. So I would say about 40 minutes because you've got to go over, the pass, and then you've still got to get through the traffic to get to the waterfront, but not far. But it does feel far when you're staying there because you feel removed from all the hustle and bustle of the Cape Town city center. And this is fantastic for honeymooners. I would absolutely say it is the most incredible location. It's also got one of the best restaurants called Chef's Warehouse, which is located in the Tinswalu Atlantic. So incredible offering. And I would highly recommend it for a couple nights.
Okay, that sounds lovely. Unique experiences. We're always throwing helicopters out there. I finally went in a helicopter this summer in Alaska with my family. And I will say I'm addicted to helicopter travel. I find it thrilling to be on the ground, waiting for it to fly in and pick you up, and then thrilling to be in it and thrilling to land. So to fly around the coast of Cape Town, right, overlooking Table Mountain and seeing the spectacular city from above would be magical.
Absolutely. And that's also definitely a must for Cape Town. If you're going to take a helicopter anywhere in South Africa, I would definitely recommend Cape Town.
Okay.
1 minute you can be going to the Winelands, you could be going around Table Mountain down to Cape of Good Hope. So there really is, it's a real unique experience, which is great.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to flip through these a little bit just so that we can keep going. Nelson Mandela obviously has he has a big presence in Cape Town long after he's been with us on Earth. Do you have a lot of people who go out to Robben's Island to see the history there? Yeah.
Absolutely. So Nelson Mandela he was based for 18 years out of the 27 years he was in prison. He was based on Robben Island. So, and this photo of him is next to his prison guard called Christo Brand. And Christo Brand was with him the whole time he was at Robben Island. So they got to know each other, which was fantastic. And they became friends. And Christo Brand now does these beautiful dinners where you can go and he'll tell you all about his experience with Nelson Mandela. And that is really something fun to do as well for clients that are looking specifically at the history of South Africa and wanting to find out more about Nelson Mandela. Also, other interesting characters are the Cape Minstrels, which is the festival goers, which is great.
I will say you guys have also some great museums, Johannesburg and in Cape Town, related to apartheid and other history of South Africa. So we won't touch on all those today, but those are definitely there.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second because I have to tell you this slide, just the slide before. I know we're not going to touch on it, but I have to quickly just tell you. Can you see the kelp forest on the top right? Now, I'm sure you've heard of The Octopus Teacher, which was an incredible documentary about an octopus in South Africa. We actually won awards for it in the US, and it really is. And please go and look up The Octopus Teacher and watch it because it is incredible. And now what we offer is actually snorkeling trips through the kelp forest to go and see the marine life, and it's all linked back to The Octopus Teacher. So that's why that image is there. And then just quickly below it, that is a cycle motorbikes that you can do going to the Winelands or going around locally in South Africa. In Cape Town. Really fun thing to do. Sorry, okay, we better keep going.
But and you just made me remember, we have a book about an octopus that was a very popular book a few years ago that my daughter bought that we both read. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm just wondering if it has anything to do with what you're referring to, but I'll check.
No, I
Okay.
don't know.
So we're
Okay.
gonna zip through Stellenbosch and Franschhoek and the
Yes.
winelands. There's spectacular properties to go out there. There's bicycle wine tastings. There's regular wine tastings. You can stay on farms. You can stay at beautiful properties with pools. It's great for kids. It's great for honeymooners. What else should we say?
I think one thing just to hone in on is in the winelands, there's basically 3 wine areas. There's Franschhoek, Stellenbosch, and Paarl. So when you're talking about winelands and which areas to go to, I would say somewhere like Stellenbosch is a little bit more active, a little bit more adventurous. There's a lot more to do there. It's a university town, so there's a great vibe to Stellenbosch. Then if you look at somewhere like Franschhoek has more got an eclectic European feel, lots of galleries and beautiful. It's actually the gastronomic center of South Africa. So when it comes to food, it really is the place to go for sure is Franschhoek. And then Paarl is also slightly more, it's sort of lovely wine farms and lovely experiences, but probably not as busy as like a Stellenbosch or a Franschhoek.
Okay. And one of we have a list of or pictures of 3 hotels properties here that are stunningly beautiful. And I just wanted to show a couple more from, tell me how you pronounce it.
Babylon Sturen.
Babylon Sturen. Stunning.
Yeah. Babylon Sturen is probably one of my ultimate best wine farms in South Africa. And in fact, it probably is my best. It has the most incredible deli where you go and you get your fresh eggs and you can make your own honey, you can make your own soap. It has incredible offerings when it comes to cheese, and there's a butchery as well that you can go and get all your meats from. The great thing is actually they do deliveries within Cape Town too. So for us locals, it really is a special to be able to just order things from there and they on your doorstep the next day. But also it's a very modern wine farm, which is great in the sense that the style and the look and the feel has almost got like a Scandinavian feel to it. It's really minimalistic, woods, glass, etc. So really, really stunning. One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of that here. I think they call it like a modern farm. So you have donkeys and chickens and, other things that are great for kids, obviously, if you're there, maybe to do at the end of your safari where they're just sort of roaming around with animals that won't bite them. And then, you also have amazing food, so many activities, just a really beautiful place to go, even if you weren't going on safari.
Absolutely.
And then maybe we talk for a minute about Johannesburg, which deserves more time than that, but it's not going to get much more. Other amazing cultural things to do, history. I know Saxon, Four Seasons, and the Fairlawns are 3 of the favorite hotels. As far as the history, if someone is a big history buff for Nelson Mandela, do you have a suggestion as to which one of these you would put them in?
Absolutely. I put them hands down at the Saxon because the Saxon is actually where Nelson Mandela wrote his book. And it's also quite close to Lily's Leaf, which Lily's Leaf is a museum all about Nelson Mandela. And you've got at the Apartheid Museum, which is further into just outside of Johannesburg Central. So for someone who wants to get the history of South Africa, Johannesburg is a must. It's also quite a trendy place. It's there's lots happening in Johannesburg. There's wonderful neighborhood markets. There's the Rosebank market, which is on a Sunday. So if clients are there during the weekend, that's a must. There's a lot to do in Joburg. And as you say, we haven't given it enough time because there is wonderful, wonderful options there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you. And I think the properties there are beautiful. It's obviously very different than Cape Town, but if you can go to both, I would say go to both.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. And it's very easy to enter into South Africa, into Cape Town, and then out of Johannesburg. Because if you're doing safari, let's say you enter into Cape Town, you do the winelands, do Cape Town, then go up to safari, and then you come back to Joburg and fly out of Joburg instead of coming all the way back to Cape Town. So it works.
Yeah, logistically, it just needs to be figured out, but you can make it work so that it actually sort of shortens your trip and you get to see both. All right. Well, I know there's more that we could talk about. I know that there's more that we want to talk about. But since we're closing in on an hour, I'm going to say it's time for us to go. But maybe you and I will circle back, and I'll get a few of your favorites that we were going to talk about. Maybe picnic spots or favorite restaurants, and I'll include that in the show notes for everybody. How's that?
Brilliant. Fantastic. Sounds great.
Well, Lylie, this has been absolutely delightful. I could talk about safaris all day long. I know you can too. I'm excited next week because I'm going to be here with one of your colleagues and we're going to be talking about Botswana. So
Great.
there are more safari destinations to come in the coming weeks. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. And I look forward to working with you on some upcoming safaris.
Wonderful, Mimi. Thank you so much for your time and including us. And I hope to see you down in Cape Town very soon for a very nice glass of wine at one of the vineyards.
Yes. And
then
let's sit at the top of the silo on the terrace up there.
Done.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye.